buy 2 lots when they developed the property, but because they did, we need to make an adjustment on this easement. This is again something I've talked to our town engineers about. Mr. Lana was involved. He's in agreement. Mr. Masters has looked at it. Mr. Train has looked at it as well. Everybody is in agreement that what I've drafted up, and again, it's not necessary that I read the entirety of this for the record. What I would ask for is a motion to abandon certain portions of a public drainage easement relative to lots 24 and 25 of Wolf Run, conditioned on attorney approval. And if someone would make that motion, I'd appreciate that.
So move discussion.
Second the discussion.
Are there the revised drainage easements in place, which would be on the outside of the,
Yes.
this new lot?
Yes.
So Mr. Train satisfied Mr.
Yes.
Masters?
Correct, yes. The remaining drainage easements that are in place satisfy what's necessary for the drainage on that lot.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then I would ask in particular, because Mr. Conrad is here today for a motion to authorize Mr. Conrad to sign this partial easement
So move.
release.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I wanted to ask one question.
I'm sorry.
Are you signing in the press of the supervisor?
Yeah.
That would be.
Oh, aye.
I practice signature.
No.
Just kidding.
And that,
Is that it?
thank you. That's all I have this evening.
Okay, all right, we'll get back on to the order of the agenda here. Approval of the meeting minutes for November 14th, 2019, public hearing, work session.
Move for approval as presented.
Second.
Excuse me, I do have one correction on the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Page 139, very last paragraph, the budget revision number 4. It's not 42,500, it's just 2,500.
Well, 2001.
So we could just change that.
Accept the amendment.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Morrell, the audit payment?
November 25th, 2019, I move to approve the regular abstract of claims number 3186 to 3321 and recommend payment in the amount of $942,068.24 plus a post audit of $15,129.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, under old business, roof bids, pavilions, Mr. Masters. I believe this item is going to be tabled.
Correct, yeah.
Take no action.
I talked to Steve, he wants to investigate a little more,
Okay.
so if we could postpone it for 2 weeks, that would be great.
Okay.
Tim, is there anticipated action,
So if there's anticipated action, like, you mean, to get them done?
or? Yeah.
Yeah. But he wanted to investigate the, Tom said there was an issue with the lease, and then
Okay.
funding and
Okay.
different things, so.
So do you need just no action, or do you need to table it, formally table it?
You can table it. I would table it.
All right, is there a motion to table?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Pending new business, residents' correspondence. Carol?
I don't think we have any. Nope.
Or Mr. Broderick's items, legal. Oh,
I don't have
sorry,
any- I don't have anything.
Anything else? Okay. Engineer?
Two things, with respect to bidding, advertising of construction for contracts. The police and parks building is well underway, and I think what we need to do now is take the next step and rebid the electrical contract. We've been trying to coordinate with the installation of the cell tower to try to piggyback on some of the work where they're going to bring the power across from Harold. I think we're planning to go ahead and do that. So I'd ask the board's permission to re-advertise for bids for the electrical contract.
Okay, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Discussion?
Rob, do we have any concern about which corner of it electrical's going in?
I can put it at each corner. I was speaking to Dave Train before the meeting, and my understanding is now that the power is going to be brought back in the original place we had it, so I think that'll be fine. It's an easy fix either way. I just need to know where it's going to be, but I'll coordinate with Dave and the county folks to find out where that's going to be.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. And then the second one is I think at this point, information for the board.
Hallelujah.
water line, the much anticipated long overdue water line. I'd like to suggest that we advertise for bids on December 16th. We open bids on January 22nd, all with the target of awarding the contract on January 27th, which I believe will be the regularly scheduled town board meeting in January. That's our target.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Is that a motion or is that just information?
you need
I guess it'd be okay if we had a motion for approval.
to,
Yeah,
to advertise.
very good.
Okay, there's a motion and get a second.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, we're not gonna incur any more costs as far as engineering with all this delay, are we? We're still good, you were okay with,
Well, there'll be more engineering during the bidding phase and the construction phase and the inspection phase, but no more on design. There were 4 phases of our scope.
Was this-
Right now, we're wrapping up, we wrapped up the design, now we're gonna go into bidding.
Would that all have occurred anyway, even without the delay?
Oh, yeah, it's all standard procedures. It's just, there's been a bit of a delay in getting concurrence from some of the permitting agencies.
Would you go over the dates again?
Sure. We would suggest that we advertise for bids on December 16th, and then open bids on January 22nd. And then that would give us a few days to canvass the bids and come up with a letter of recommendation to award, and our target would be January 27th of 2020 for the board to award the contract. All else goes
well, Bob, you really didn't answer what I was asking. You got awarded a 1.3 million, wasn't it, contract? Is that staying the same then, even though with the delay, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, there's no additional engineering due to the delay.
That's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, yeah, I misunderstood, yeah, our contract will remain the same regardless of the delay.
Rob, no change orders?
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Let me ask a question. You know, the state was, the Creek Road, did they come around on that?
Well, that's an interesting question. We had provided the state, DOT particularly, drawings of our original line. And we met with them downtown Buffalo, and they had some suggested edits. In particular for Creek Road, they wanted the water line moved away from the road as far as we could, which is essentially closer to the school, but still within the DOT right, which was an easy fix. We made that no problem. The other area is up along Lewiston Road. It goes from the bridge down toward Mountain View Drive, that stretch there. There have been some changes there that we actually were able to eliminate about 600 feet of water line with some additional crossings that we had to do there. So the accommodations the DOT has requested, we have made.
My concern on Creek Road was, by moving that back, the hydrant's gonna be very, very inaccessible.
No, that shouldn't change. We can locate the hydrants wherever we can. The location of the main is just what their concern was.
Okay. All right.
The hydrant does not have to be right over the line.
Yeah, there's a main line and then a hydrant branch off of that. We can put at whatever length is necessary.
Because in the past years, we've actually put up little, almost bridges from the road over to it, because they're so far away. So we made that effort to make them accessible.
That was my big concern there, was just the push for the fire department.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Those are, locations of hydrants are very easily accommodated. Those are more or less trying to get DOT to approve. Ultimately, what will be required of the construction contractor is to obtain a highway work permit from New York State DOT. So that's going to be a responsibility of the successful bidder to provide maintenance and protection of traffic plans, as well as getting a highway work permit and like the bonding requirements that the DOT has, all of which will be the contractor's responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any further discussion?
And for the record, I'm not sure if it was 1.2 million or 1.1.
1.1.
1.1, okay, just so we keep it on the record, 1.1. Okay.
Just a quick question. How many qualified bidders do you see showing up for something like this?
Qualified?
Well, I mean, you have to qualify them, I just,
Well, they have to be the lowest, they have to be a responsible bidder, one, and the low bidder has to, you know, a responsive and responsible bidder. For a project this size, you're gonna probably get a fair bit of interest, okay? Several here in Western New York will go after that. It's hard to say. I would expect you'd probably get 6 to 10,
that many.
I would think. Part of the advantage of bidding it at this time of year is they're able to set their stage for the construction season of 2020. If you bid it in July, construction season is well underway, you might not get might not be as much of an appetite for a large job like this. Early, I think will be, the town could be in a no better position in terms of the bidding climate if you bid it in December, January.
So
Get
if you,
everything together, and then the snow melts, and then
if you award it in January, February, how long do you expect the whole thing to take?
we've allocated 1 year, 1 year of construction. What will likely happen is if everything goes well and there's no issues with the bidding, it's awarded in the end of January. Probably about 30 days later, we have a notice to proceed, everything else going smoothly. And then we'll likely get the main line and the hydrants and all of the infrastructure in 2020. Likely to be grass restoration in the spring of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Lance. Any other
One discussion? When contractors bid, is there a rating for contractors if they have problems for other construction, phases?
You have to award it to the lowest responsible bidder, okay? And the only, I'll say, criteria, if you will, is if a contractor or a bidder was disbarred from bidding public work because of the New York State Department of Labor violations. We will be required to include New York State wage rates, okay, which is probably about 50 or 60 pages of wage rates. And included in that wage determination, at the end of that, will be a list of contractors across the entire state which are precluded from bidding on public work project for a period of time due to one violation or another. It's usually they're not paying
for
work.
workmanship.
No, that's I wish there was, but there is not.
Well, you also had, I mean, most qualified bidder also has to be, have done similar work over a period of years. Is that the way the RFP went out?
That kind of goes toward the responsiveness of the bidder. I'm sorry, the responsibility of the bidder.
Adequate bond protection for us.
Yeah.
Bonding, there'll be bonds, performance bond, labor material bond, all kinds of bonds and insurances.
No, we don't do that.
So it'll be, it's quite an involved project.
We've already had a motion. Carol, was there a second?
I think you all made a second.
No, you already approved it.
Yeah. Don't be stupid.
Do we vote?
We didn't vote yet.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
They jumped the gun, just voted 4-0.
Okay.
Thank you, that's all I had unless there's any questions.
All right, caused enough trouble, Bob. All right, finance, Jake.
Tonight I have 3 budget revisions. The first one is to move a total of $900 from the assessor's contractual budget into the assessor's equipment budget to cover the purchase of a new server. The current server that they have right now has crashed twice, and it's been highly recommended to replace it as soon as possible.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, next.
The second revision is requesting to move a total of $1,778 from the police SRO revenue budget to the police BOCES SRO personnel budget to cover the BOCES SRO personnel expenses that occurred over the summer. This was something that occurred and there was no budget set up into it. It was a new adventure this year.
So second.
Any discussion?
Again, this is at no cost to us. This is.
That's correct. They paid for the entirety of that expense.
Salaries and benefits, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The last one is requesting to move a total of $2,675. $1,000 coming from dog control equipment budget, $1,675 coming from dog control contractual budget, and both of that being moved into the building equipment budget to cover new carpet tiles in the front foyer of Town Hall building.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The last thing I have is, we are in a contract with Drescher and Malecki as our auditors. And annually, we have to sign annual financial report update documents, the AUD, as well as the audit engagement letters. So I asked the board to authorize the supervisor to sign both of those engagement letters.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, anything else?
No, thank you.
Mr. Beck, liaison report?
Make a motion to approve the hiring of a Josh Stack as the last maintenance hire over at the wastewater treatment plant. My understanding that this is going to, his employment would start January 2nd, 2020, and be pursuant to the terms of the employment contract,
Second.
union contract, I'm sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And secondly, I'd like to authorize the highway department to go out to bid, subject to attorney approval for the brush removal.
Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's all I got.
Mr. Guyton?
The Town of Lewiston Senior Center will be having its annual Christmas luncheon on December 10th, and the board members are encouraged to attend. Please, if you're going to stay for lunch, call 754-2071. Senior Center is a great place of camaraderie, education, entertainment, refreshments, nurturing. It's a good place to stop off and visit. And if by any chance one of you is available on December 10th, there's some full costumes that we can get from the chamber if you'd like to be the Grinch or somebody to entertain.
You wouldn't have to dress up then.
No. Just come.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Ouch.
Is that it?
That's it.
Mr. Jacoby?
I don't really have anything to report other than we had the Historical Preservation Committee meeting, and we didn't have a quorum, but one of the main reasons we didn't have a quorum is because Mrs. Maggard had her surgery, and I believe it's hip, if I'm not mistaken. And
How is she?
I think she's doing well, afterwards go for the rehab, but, everyone should keep in our thoughts and prayers. That's all I got.
The bicentennial committee has skipped a couple of meetings. Hopefully,
Yeah, by
2020, we can kick it into high gear.
Yeah, they thought through the holidays that, we weren't going to get the attendance we needed, so we didn't have those meetings. 2 months.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right, Mr. Morrell?
Just touch base on the streetlights. We paid for our end of the streetlights that we needed to pay for, and we did cash our check. So we're in the scheduling process, so I was hoping to see the lights done by the end of the year, but I think we're gonna go a few months into that. But I'll get more for the next meeting, see when they're gonna be completed.
When they go on, Rob, and we get the complaints on how bright they are, will you come
Don't
back?
call me. Where is it, Jason? You're back there?
But a quick discussion on that, Rob did, as Bill and everyone is aware, Rob did a hell of a job with that.
That's
And it's gonna save all of us money in our taxes, and it's gonna provide better lighting. It's a win-win-win.
I agree.
I think we ought to congratulate Rob for his work.
Okay, move back to, yes, sir.
Yes.
Is there a reason why you're here?
Well, I didn't know there was a reason why I was here. I received a call about 5:45 from Dave Train, and he said, we're moving the county wants to move the specific location of the cell tower. He said, are you coming to the meeting tonight? I said, well, I don't think they need me for anything. I said, do you need me at the meeting? He says, yes, come down. So I said, okay, I can be there in 10 minutes. And so the bottom line is we'll coordinate with Chief Rydell. I'll find out what the change is, if it requires any further board approval or approvals by any of the committees or commissions that did review and approve the presentation as it was put together, then we'll make the necessary changes. If it takes another vote,
We've
Fair
been
enough.
working,
I'll talk with Dave.
cooperatively with the county.
Yeah.
They're covering all the expenses.
Yeah.
They just need the property, and then we have the asset that we've been looking for all these years.
Yep, so I was told that it's not a big move, but it's not like we're moving it more than 20, 30 feet or anything like that, from what I gather.
Is that
So
all
Dave
right,
says
Tim?
it's small.
It'll be moved more than 20, 30 feet, yes. Because the tower itself is 180 feet, so we don't want the tower to fall on any of our own buildings.
Okay. It's 50 by 50 area that we're leasing to the county. So we'll report back. I'll work with everybody involved. I don't know if you know anything about it yet.
My interest is where the power's coming from.
Sure. So they're still gonna move it over to, from Harold Road, across Harold Road.
Yep, that's perfect, yeah.
Okay, so you might see me again.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move back to resident statements. Evening.
Good evening, Amy Woodtree, Long River Road. I just want to get some additional clarification from Mr. Seaman on the interpretation of the recusal issue. It's not a surprise to me that Mr. Bax, and also one of the most honest and earnest members of the town council this town has ever had, Mr. Morial, asked to recuse themselves for using their discretion, either the legal requirement or their discretion to feel comfortable in avoiding even the appearance of a conflict of interest. So I wondered if the situation were different, Mr. Seaman, and there was some issue that came before a board where a town council member said to you, well, gee, I guess I have to choose between the town and my family. In that sort of a situation, would you encourage them to recuse themselves if they had an immediate family member who had a financial conflict or a financial benefit from a board action, let's say?
Ma'am, I appreciate your question, but what I'm not going to do at this board meeting is have you stand and pose fanciful questions that are based on some subjective facts you have in your own mind and try to ask me what the legal analysis would be about it. All I've heard you say is if there was a scenario where someone had to choose between their family and the board, I'm not going to engage in you laying out a fact scenario to try to challenge my legal interpretations on it.
Oh, no.
What's happened between me and the board today was my interpretation of the legal matter, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of your...
I'm not here to engage in conversation with you, nor is that the purpose of public comment, for you to come up and question each and every one at this table and require responses. That's not the purpose for a comment. Public comment is here for you to make your comments. The board will acknowledge your comments if they want to, and then that's the end of the public comment.
Okay, so other members of the public who ask questions and get answers during the meeting doesn't...
I'm not going to engage in an argument with you. I've made the 2 statements that I wish to about that tonight. Thank you.
Okay, well, what I would say to the board, Mr. Deputy, that it certainly would be helpful if you would comment on what you feel appropriate guidance is. The hypothetical that I laid out to Mr. Seaman was not for the intent or the mind reading that Mr. Seaman portrayed, but nevertheless, because there are legal requirements for recusal, and then there is discretion for recusal, and given that we want the highest level of ethics in the town as opposed to the bare minimum, perhaps at the next meeting, I would certainly welcome comments from the board as to how they interpret the situations when recusal may be appropriate. We certainly heard that from Mr. Bax and Mr. Morial this evening. I would certainly like to hear the view of whatever hypothetical situation you think is appropriate to illustrate when you feel you should recuse yourself and when not, recognizing that any hypothetical is purely hypothetical. And I would expect that your comments would be reasonable and informative and guidance, and not with the hostility that Mr. Seaman made his remarks this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trout.
Watch
Anyone
this.
else
No,
like to speak?
watch this.
Yeah. I have a question for Jackie and then a statement. Can I ask you how much the town pays Mr. Seaman annually?
I would have to go back and look at that.
Is it $39,000? Was it $39,000 a year?
I would have to go back and look at that.
Okay, so
Public
last
comment
year.
period is not intended for.
I'm making my comment now.
No,
You don't speak.
you're directing
I'm making my
questions.
comment now.
Ma'am,
You
you're
want to get
directing-
at
you're
it?
directing
I'm not asking for a legal
Please.
opinion.
You're directing questions.
Everyone,
I'm asking a question.
all right, enough. Now,
I'm
let's
asking a question.
keep it civil.
I'm going
Specific-
to until I was interrupted.
All right, a specific question about
It's a
someone's
specific
salary, it's published, it was published in the,
No, but the attorney's bill are not published. Just the elected officials are
right, well,
published.
let's keep it civil, okay?
I'm keeping it civil.
Thank you.
Just as long as nobody interrupts me when I ask a question. Because I'm paying people's salary, and I'd like to know how much we're paying this gentleman. I know how much we pay the highway
She said she
department.
didn't know the answer, so
Okay.
that's something that,
Okay, we have an ethics code that's now in process. One of the phrases on that, and I commend you, Rob, and Al, and I know, Al, you and I have had some problems in the past, but I commend you for what you did. That's what you're supposed to do ethically. There's a section in our ethics law that says when a town employee or official feels that they ethically are bound to recluse themselves, I'm paraphrasing, and I believe it's section G, that they are within their right to recluse themselves. The Alliance brought to this board a revised ethics code policy. I would hope we would go back and visit the ethics code. In fact, Al had it, and Rob had a lot to do with the writing of it. I would hope that this town would go back and revisit the passage of that and tighten up some of the ethics questionable decisions that were made tonight. Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving.
thank you, same to you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay. Move on to upcoming board meetings. Mr. Kevin Jansen? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought I interrupted you. All right, if you have to. All right, town offices are closed November 28th through 29th for Thanksgiving. Town board work session is Thursday, December 9th.
I don't know why she put Thursday, it's Monday.
I'm sorry,
No, I don't know why that's on there. It's Monday, December 9th.
Monday, December 9th, okay. Environmental Commission meeting is December 10th at 7 PM. Zoning Board of Appeals, December 12th at 6:30 PM. The Historic Preservation meeting is on December 17th at 6, and the Planning Board meeting will be December 19th at 6:30. That's it?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second? All in favor? Aye.